I'm back with another episode of Butt Crack Cycles, and on this episode we're going to be doing some more Shovelhead work. Specifically, we're going to be doing some carburetor work. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and this is my YouTube channel. Pretty much all we do here is vintage Harley Davidsons, pre-Evo for the most part. My Shovelhead has been giving me some issues. Most notably, I went to go ride it last week, and I ran out of gas. You might say to yourself, well, that's your own fault for not checking it, but I hadn't put enough miles on that bike to have used an entire tank of fuel. So I'm kind of going to be spending this episode figuring out where that gas is going. Anyways, let's stop yapping, go in the shop, and start working on a carburetor. Specifically, this episode will apply to S&S Super E carbs. Anyways, I hope you learned something, or at the very least you're entertained. Let's go work. So the kind of backstory here as to why I think I actually have a problem going on is that I filled both of these tanks up on this bike probably like 2 months ago. These tanks hold like 3 gallons. And I went and rode the bike, not very far. I went, I don't know, 8 miles or so, less than 10 miles. Came home and parked it. The bike sat for a month. I got on it to go to ride it. I made it a few miles down the street, realized I had no front brakes and my shifter was giving me some issues, so I turned around, came home. Maybe 4 to 5 miles on it on that trip. Fixed the front brakes, worked on the shifter a little, went and took it for another test ride. Again, went around 10 miles, probably a little bit less, came home. 2 days later, I get on the bike, I go to ride it. I'm actually gonna take it for a long ride. I made it like 3 miles down the road and ran out of fuel. Swapped it to reserve, rode it like 1.5 miles back home. The reserve on this petcock and these tanks apparently is terrible. So that's about as far as I got. And then pushed it and finally ended up just walking home and coming back with the gas can. The point is, I basically burned 3 gallons of fuel in 30 miles or less, which means this thing is getting like 10 miles to the gallon is one possibility, or we have a fuel leak is the other possibility. So let's go back over the bike and actually start working on this thing. We have been out of town at the beach for the last week, and before I left, I had before we left, I had the bike parked right here, exactly as it is, with the petcock open, and I took this screwdriver, insulated screwdriver, and stuck it down in the tank, and you can see I've marked it with how much fuel was in the tank. So it's been probably 10 days since I did that. Like I said, I left the petcock open on purpose just to see, is the carburetor letting, fuel by the needle and seat? Do I have a bad needle and seat? And then is it just going down into the engine? So let's dip the tank and see where we come out. I'm not sure how well it's going to come through on camera, but that's the end of the wetness. So we haven't lost any fuel with the petcock being open, so that makes me feel pretty good about the needle and seat. I guess let's move on to the carburetor. Essentially what I'm going to do here is go through all 3 of the adjustments on this carburetor and just put them back to a baseline and see how far off I was from them. I don't think I'm very far off. S&S has a pretty good quick start, quick tune guide, whatever you want to call it, on their website as a PDF you can download. But essentially what you want is your idle mixture screw, which is this guy right here. We're going to turn it in until it stops, and then we want to be about 1.5, 1.25 turns out from very lightly seated. Don't go crazy when you seat this, it just needs to just touch down. So I'm going to turn it in and count the turns and see how far out I was. That's a 1/2 a turn, 1 turn, 1.5. That's touchdown, so maybe 1 3/4 out. Next up, your idle speed screw is this one right here. This is your actual one that rolls the throttle plate, that actually rolls the throttle plate open. You basically just want to let it touch down and turn it another 1/2 turn. You can play with it later. Okay, so it's just kind of touched right there. Give it a 1/2 a turn from that. And our last one over here, all the way to the far right, is your accelerator pump shot adjustment. On this one, oh, maybe that's my issue. Maybe I'm just drowning this thing in fuel with the accelerator pump. I was about 3 turns out. If it's touched all the way down, the accelerator pump is turned off. Some bikes will run with the pump turned off. S&S says to start with it 2 turns out. So touch it down and then back it off 2 turns. I have heard that a lot of guys will just leave the pump turned off and then see how the bike responds. And if it doesn't take throttle well, then start backing it out 1/8 to 1/4 at a turn. I do know that the accelerator pumps on these carburetors really move a lot of fuel. That might be my whole issue here. So you can probably hear the bike running in the shop behind me. Came outside so y'all can actually hear what I'm saying. I played with the accelerator pump shot adjustment on it. Seemed like I've gotten it decent. We'll take it down the road. That'll really be where you can tell it's rolling into it under a load. But it should be fairly warm now. We're gonna go do the idle mixture adjustment. Basically, you just want to run your idle mixture screw in to lean it out, and it'll start to kind of stumble. You bring it back up and it'll come back up, and you can bring it back out some more, richen it some more, and it'll run bad again. And essentially you just want to keep playing with it in and out, lean and rich, until you get it to like that best high idle. Then you can go back and adjust your idle stop screw for your throttle plate to get your idle where you want it to be. So in the following clip, I'm doing accelerator pump adjustment. I'm starting with it turned completely off, snapping the throttle, seeing how it responds, backing the adjuster off to give it more pump shot until I get to a point that it seems good. I back it off some more, it gets worse, so I turn it back in and then seem to be at a happy spot. Up next is idle mixture adjustment, like I described earlier. Lean it out till it stumbles, back it up a little more till it stumbles, come back in, try and find a happy medium. Finally, we're going to redo the idle speed adjustment. You can hear that the engine's idled up, so we're just going to back that off a hair to bring it back down to a good low idle. Then it's time to take the bike for a ride. Okay, so we're in the driveway, and I have finished my adjustments on the carburetor. Bike's warm. We're gonna go take it for a ride. I'm trying a chest mount on the GoPro instead of the helmet mount. So maybe this will be a more pleasing view, and maybe we'll have some better audio quality. I don't know. I've got the microphone tucked under the collar of my shirt. I'm wearing my open face helmet instead of the full face. So let's take off down the road and see what we get. Both tanks are completely full. camera, but coming up that little crest over that little hill, had a little spit back through the carburetor, kind of popped back on me like it's still lean. Try and hold just a real light, steady throttle on it. Sometimes it'll do it, and sometimes it won't. Will it stay idling? Yes. Seems like it's got a pretty good steady idle. Brought a little screwdriver with me. Good there, it popped back through the carb pretty good. Still seems like this is lean. Might need a little more accelerator pump. We might need a little bit more slow idle, or slow idle jet. I kind of want to get on this thing though. See how much fuel's in this if we burned it way down. They're still pretty high up. Fast forward back to the shop. The test ride actually went pretty good. Come back home, I rationed the idle mixture out just a hair more, turned it another quarter of a turn or so back out, and I bumped the idle speed up just a little more, and I went for a second test run. And on that second run, after doing that, it seems like that little bit of hiccup and cough back through the carburetor is gone. So I'm about 1.5 turns out on the idle mixture screw. Accelerator pump, I was like 3 turns out, and now I'm closer to 1.5. This bike does seem like it wants some accelerator pump shot. I'm not going to change anything else to it right now. I'm going to adjust the clutch. Y'all might have seen in one of those clips riding, when I finally really laid into it and opened it up, the clutch seemed like it was slipping a little bit in the higher gears. This thing seems like it actually has pretty good power when you get on it. I've never actually gone wide open throttle on this bike before. just because it's constantly always having problems, and I'm always just kind of gingerly riding it, afraid of what's going to break. So we'll adjust the clutch, and I'm going to leave everything else alone. And then I'm going to go ride it. I'm going to try and put as many miles as I can on it this week and just monitor my fuel consumption and get some sort of a rough handle on what kind of fuel mileage I'm getting out of this thing. And do I need to drop back and punt and try and rejet this, or maybe even switch carburetors? I've also considered these exhaust pipes are obviously completely open, maybe welding the washer or something inside of them. That way I can maybe build a little bit more back pressure in the system, and it might not want to be so rich. I might be able to step down a jet size somewhere in this equation, or even just lean that idle mixture back out. But before I go doing that, like I said, I want to just try and run an entire tank of fuel through this thing and get a rough handle on what kind of mileage I'm getting, and that should, in my mind, let me know that I'm pretty close or still pretty far off on my carburetor settings. So let's adjust the clutch real quick on this thing, and I guess we'll go ride it some more. It's really dark over here. I can't really get a good angle with the camera for the clutch adjustment. There's really not much to it. You just take the slack, put slack in your cable with the cable adjuster, knock your derby cover off, take your adjuster loose, back your screw out, go in until you touch, back it off a little, tighten your adjuster down, derby cover back on, get the right slack for your handlebar controls, and then you should be good. Just read the book.
Alright, the bike's back in the driveway. It's a couple of days later. I'm kind of trying to bend over so y'all can see it. We're doing the chest mount again for the GoPro. I was actually pretty happy with that. I've been editing this video, and I think the video and the audio quality on that so far is the best I've gotten, better than the closed face helmet. I think I've ridden, I don't know, maybe 20 miles on this bike. I've been keeping track of my routes and on Google Maps, and then just writing down the mileage on a piece of paper. But we're gonna go take this thing for another ride today. So let's start it up and go down the road. First thing we're gonna do is check our fuel level. Higher on this tank than that tank. Not too stressed about it, but we're still pretty far up there. I did adjust the clutch on it the other day, though I haven't ridden it since doing so. Adjust the idle down. God, this thing shifts so fucking bad. Trying to catch second back there. Somehow I bumped it past second. I think this might be second. I don't know. It's got me nervous now. I caught first. Slid the back tire.
bike ever. Just rode over to our old shop. It's from my house, 32 miles round trip. That exact route that I took, I know that for a fact. Did it every day for a while. Then tacked a couple extra miles on, just riding around some back roads, dirt roads, and stuff like this. But I had a pretty fun time riding this bike. Let's go back to the shop and wrap this episode up. Still a mattress over there. I guess some homeless person's living out here in the woods. Who frickin' knows?
And look what's he yeeted himself off the porch. Huh. That was fun.
So we're back at the shop. Let's wrap this episode up. I'm smiling. I'm happy. This is the most I've ever ridden this bike in any given period of time. I put over 40 miles on this motorcycle today. I rode it twice actually, and really didn't miss a beat. It's not perfect. It still has a little bit of that like drag pipe sag where you roll into it and that mid-range kind of just doesn't pull quite cleanly enough at part throttle. I think the ultimate solution for this is to put some lollipops in it, drill a hole through the pipes, put a bolt with a washer welded to it or a thumb screw through instead of a bolt with a washer. I think this is a result of that reversion coming back. That, however, is something for a future episode. I think that'll actually make a pretty good episode, just taking care of that. Anyways, I'm psyched. I finally got to spend some time actually riding this bike, putting some miles on it, getting to know the character of this motorcycle, and I'm just really glad I didn't give up on this thing. So if you're a longtime viewer who's been watching this project from the start, we're far from done. I still have a lot of work left to do on this thing, but thank you for watching, and thank you everybody who's left encouraging words on my older videos, just, you know, egging me on to keep up on this thing and not just give up. We're going to end this episode right here. I'm going to go pull some tanks off of this thing and get started painting them so this thing will be all one color. As always, thank you for watching. I'll see y'all on the next episode.